Well, hello, everybody. I was wanting to share a story with you. The kids, since they're all home, you can get online and people can read stories to them. And I thought, well, why not adults? So I wanted to read an excerpt out of this book called Evidence Not Seen. And it's by Darlene Rose. It was wrote in 1988. And this is the story of a young American missionary and her courage and triumph of faith in the jungles of New Guinea and her 4 years in a notorious Japanese prison camp. Never to see her husband again, she was forced to sign a confession to a crime she did not commit and face the executioner's sword only to be miraculously spared. And this story is about her time in that prison those 4 years. But there's one story in particular that has just the first time I ever read this story, it spoke to me so much. And throughout the many years that it spoke to me since I first read this book, I wanted to share this story with you about God's provision and His kindness. The actions of one woman in particularly fascinated me. Every time the sentry on duty turned his back to her and marched to the other end of the courtyard, she inched over toward a fence covered with Honolulu creeper. When the guard clicked his heels, turned about, and began to stroll in her direction, she stopped. There he went, and there she went. Aha, intrigue. She's going to make contact with someone who's hidden in those vines. Isn't that exciting? Oh, do be careful. With no books to read, I'll watch the drama taking place here right before my eyes. I empathized with her. I wanted her to succeed and not be caught. Finally, reaching the vine-covered fence, the woman stood very still. The guard clicked his heels and went off again. At that moment, I saw a hand shoot through the tangle of vine. It held a big bunch of bananas. Quickly, she grabbed the bananas, slipped them into the folds of her sarong, and strolled nonchalantly back to join the other women. Nobody knew she had those bananas, but I did. Bananas. I dropped to the floor of my cell. Exhausted from my efforts, I shook all over. Worse still, I began to crave bananas. Everything in me wanted one. I could see them, I could smell them, I could taste them. I got down on my knees and I said, Lord, I'm not asking you for a whole bunch like that woman has. I just want one banana. I looked up and pleaded, Lord, just one banana. Then I began to rationalize, how could God possibly get a banana to me through these prison walls? I would never ask the guard. If he helped me and was discovered, it would mean reprisals. I would certainly never ask a favor of the interrogator or the brain. There was more chance of the moon falling out of the sky than one of them bringing me a banana. Then I ran out of people. These three were the only ones. Of course, there was the old Indonesian night watchman. Don't ever even let it enter his thinking to bring me a banana. He'd be shot if caught. I bowed my head again and prayed, Lord, there's no one here who could get a banana to me. There's no way for you to do it. Please don't think I'm not thankful for the rice porridge. It's just that, well, those bananas look so delicious. What I needed to do was link my impotence to God's omniscience. But I couldn't see how God could get a banana to me through those prison walls, even after the knife episode and my healing. When the Japanese officers from the ships docked in Mascar Harbor visited the prison, great hardships were inflicted upon the prisoners. We were laughed at, scorned, and insulted. When our cells were opened, we were expected to bow low at a perfect 90-degree angle. If we didn't perform to their satisfaction, we were struck across the back with a cane. These were humiliating and desperate experiences. The morning after the banana drama, I heard the click of the officers' leather heels on the concrete walkway. The thought of getting to my feet and having to execute a bow was onerous, to say the least. My weight had dropped during those months in the converted insane asylum. Until now, I was skin drawn over bones. One nice thing about me and my streamlined proportions was that the thinner I got, the longer my dress became. So I had more covering at night. I stretched out my hands often and laughed at my bird's claws. The meager daily meals were not designed for putting on weight. I had been healed, but I needed food for strength. I wondered if I could manage to get to my feet and remain upright, but I was determined that when that door opened, they would find me on my feet. The officers were almost at the door. I reached up, grabbed the window ledge, and pulled myself upright. Now, Lord, I prayed, officers are coming. Give me strength to make a proper bow. I heard the guard slip a key into the door, but he had the wrong one and ran back to the office to get the right key. I dropped to the floor to rest and came back to my feet when I heard his tennis shoe shod feet moving quickly down the walkway. My legs were trembling, and I clutched the bars of the window to steady myself. Lord, please help me to bow correctly. Finally, the door opened, and I looked into the smiling face of Mr. Yamahe, the camp commander. This was early July, and it had been so long since I had seen a smiling or familiar face. I clapped my hands and exclaimed, Mr. Yamahe, it's just like seeing an old friend. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't say a word, but turned and walked into the courtyard and began to talk to the two officers who had conducted my interrogations. At roll call on Kampali, I had had to give certain commands in Japanese, but I had made a deliberate effort to learn as little of the Japanese language as possible. It was better not to know. I couldn't understand what Yamahe was saying, but he spoke with them for a long time. What happened to the belligerence of those who too had conducted themselves toward me? I could see their heads hanging lower and lower. Perhaps he spoke to them of my work as a missionary, or maybe he shared with them concerning that afternoon in his office after I had learned of Russell's death, when I spoke of Christ, my Savior, who gives us love for others, even for our enemies, those who use us badly. Finally, Mr. Yamahe came back to my cell. You're very ill, aren't you? He said sympathetically. Yes, sir, Mr. Yamahe, I am. I'm going back to the camp now. Have you any word for the women? The Lord gave me confidence to answer. Yes, sir. When you go back, please tell them that I'm all right. I'm still trusting the Lord. They'll understand what I mean, and I believe you do. All right, he replied, then turned on his heels and left. When Mr. Yamahe and the Kampali officers had gone and the guard had closed the door, it hit me. I didn't bow to those men. Oh, Lord, I cried, why didn't you help me to remember? They'll be back and beat me, Lord, please. Not back to the hearing room again. Not now, Lord, I can't. I just can't. I heard the guard coming back and knew he was coming for me. Struggling to my feet, I stood ready to go. He opened the door, walked in, and with a sweeping gesture laid at my feet bananas. They're yours, he said, and they're all from Mr. Yamahe. I sat down in stunned silence and counted them. There were 92 bananas. In all my spiritual experience, I have never known such extreme shame before the Lord. I pushed the bananas into a corner and wept before him. Lord, forgive me, I'm so ashamed. I couldn't trust you enough to get even one banana for me. Just look at them, they're almost 100. In the quiet of the shadowed cell, he answered back within my heart. That's what I delight to do, the exceeding abundant above anything you could ask or think. I knew in those moments that nothing is impossible to my God. After God assured me that it was his delight to send me those bananas, my heart was salved, and it took all the character I possessed not to eat all 92 in one sitting. After months of meager rations of rice porridge, I knew that to gorge could make me deathly ill. So I portioned out so many bananas per day, saving the greener ones for last. This was God's provision, and strength began to flow into my body. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Psalm 23:5. This book, when I read it years ago, it just so spoke to me that she prayed for a banana, and then when she prayed for the banana, she's like, well, I can't figure a way for you to get it to me, Lord. She felt like she had to work for the Lord to get that, tell him what to do to get that banana to her, and she couldn't figure out a way. And then in his kindness and his love, he brought 92 bananas to her. And after all that she had went through in the healing, she needed those bananas. She needed what the bananas had in them for her body to heal. And he knew that. He knew, despite her being imprisoned, that she needed bananas. And he sent them to her. And honestly, this whole book is about things that God did during those times. I can't even imagine what she or many, many, many other people went through in the prisons that they were in, whether it be Japanese or German or whatever it was. Um, but these are stories of hope for us. We are not going through at all what Darlene went through or many others. We're just being asked to stay home so we don't get a virus that could become fatal to some people. That's what we're doing. We're asked to stay home. That's not so difficult. You're asked to stay home with your children and help them with their schoolwork for when they go back to school. Yes, it's inconvenient. I get that. I get it's inconvenient. But think of it this way. This is a holy, God-ordained time for you and your family. Just like he brought bananas to her, he's bringing this time to our families. American families are so busy, and they've got so many things on their plate that we need to realize that God wants us to spend time with our families and enjoy our families and be a family, and not to get our schedule so booked up with so many other things that in 10 years, is that really going to even matter? Is it? What's going to matter in 10 years? So even though our situation is nothing at all similar to this, God's provision for her and his delight in her. He delighted to bring her those bananas. He delights to bring you time with your family. I just think that's holy and precious. That never happened with me and my children when they were growing up. We never even had social interaction like what we can have today to encourage one another and to help one another. So take advantage of all these things that God has blessed you with. It just really is remarkable. And the verse that God spoke to her is Ephesians 3:20, that he will do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ask, think, or imagine. And it says, according to the power that works within us. He is the power that works within us. He can help you if you struggle with maybe patience or dealing with some things. He can help you with that time. And did you see what she felt when the bananas came? Shame. Thinking that she could do what only God could do. And my heart was just like, wow, I don't know if that would be my first response. It might be thank you, but hers was that she had doubted him and was trying to find a way for him. So I hope this is a blessing to you. I hope you enjoy your day, and may you experience the beautiful gift of God today.